Okay, I think we're set to go. So it looks like we've got a nice crowd today. Good morning once again to everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Ben. I'm a strategist at Argentum Consultants and head strategist of Cluster 5, the cluster of climate, mobility, and energy, which we'll be discussing upcoming funding opportunities for this cluster during our current webinar. Now, before we get started and look into funding opportunities, we'd like to give you a brief introduction about Argentum Consultants. So, Argentum specializes in EU research and innovation funding. Our company was established in 1999, so quite a while ago, and since then has had vast experience and gained expertise in obtaining governmental funding for innovative technology, research, and development. Currently, we've got around 30 employees divided into 3 departments, those being business development, consulting and writing team, and in between those two, the strategy department, which I am part of, and which we will see the composition of in a couple of slides. Now, our vision is to target innovative funding opportunities and to enhance participation and success in multinational research and innovation projects. The next couple of slides will show exactly how we have defined our innovative approach to funding as a tool for your success as clients and as partners. We have at Argentum a unique proposition which we have defined throughout the years and have perfected. We know that there is an abundance of funding opportunities out there, but at the same time, this abundance can also be a bit of a challenge to navigate due to the complexity that is always a part of the submission process. And in addition to that, due to the plethora of details and guidelines of each distinct funding opportunity. So in a sense, what could be an opportunity is often overshadowed by technical and bureaucratic obstacles. Here we step in, and in order to overcome these obstacles and turn them into advantages for you, we at Argentum have developed a unique method to increase our clients' access to funding whilst minimizing the efforts required on your part. We call this process the multi-submission strategy approach, shortened MSS, which means that we target multiple calls at the same time and multiple funding sources in order to optimize our chances for you to get funded, as well as to create a rational and stable strategy of non-dilutive funding for our clients. Now, all of the grants and tenders that we engage with can be and perhaps should be considered a source of potential revenue for you. These grants, these tenders, these funding opportunities can all be quite competitive and demanding in terms of both eligibility criteria, specific requirements, time requirements, and so on. So from our point, we will appoint a dedicated project manager here at Argentum for each project that you do with us. And together, we will conceptualize and support proposal preparation all the way until the final submission. Altogether, we believe that our methodology and professional experience have one main goal, being to increase your success rate throughout your experience with us and throughout different funding opportunities that you will engage. We'll turn now to another slide to examine more closely our proposal preparation process as a whole. So here we can see in this slide the 4 main components that we see of proposal support, those being concept, consortium, coordination, and finalization. We'll go start to finish. First of all, we discuss with you the concept for a project. It could be start as a very high level concept, but then we break it down into components and then restructure them to have a complete concept note for a project. That being a deep analysis of a core topic once we have made sure that the core, the funding, the eligibility are all in line with your requirements and your needs. Then afterwards, we take the concept, which we have devised together, and we build a partnership. Now, if a project, as we'll see also in later slides, is for a single applicant, then obviously we do not need a consortium. But one of the major appeals of applying for European funding is joining large consortia where you could be one partner in, let's say, a 10 partner consortia, could be 15 or obviously much larger. And in those consortia, you will have one role or a few roles, and the consortia as a whole might have a very large budget. So if we are applying as part of the consortium, we will be utilizing the company and Argentum's network in order to match you with relevant partners and stakeholders. We will apply campaigns to reach out for participants, and we will also launch events in order to attract relevant participants. There's also a difference whether you will be going as a participant in a consortium or as a coordinator, which I'll also touch upon a bit later during the webinar. Moving on to the third component, which is actually the major component of the proposal preparation. This is the coordination of the proposal preparation process. And here we at Argentum will do the management of the entire proposal preparation process, which means the periodic meetings with the professional department, with stakeholders, participants, the creation of an advisory board if needed, and the budget coordination. So all of that part we will be doing with you, with our vast expertise and proven knowledge in these fields. The last happy part of the proposal preparation is when the proposal is submitted. And also here, submission is a process. We use a team review system to review the proposals. We do the proofreading, we do the proposal design, and we submit the proposal online for you. So this was just an overview of the project support system that we at Argentum support and provide. Now let's go and look into the way we work with funding mechanisms and funding opportunities, and that will lead us onto the discussion into cluster 5 upcoming opportunities. So the first stage we at Argentum believe of funding is choosing the right call for the right project and the right client. When we discuss grant opportunities and options with our clients, we usually divide them into several criteria. First of all, it will be the thematic field. We divide them largely into bottom-up calls, which are open to all fields of technology, and top-down calls, which usually deal with answering a specific challenge in a specific field. We will see examples of both in a couple of slides. Then we also discuss the funding mechanism. If it's a consortium that is supported by the EU, most likely a Horizon Europe consortium, then it will be one funding mechanism, usually for a grant only, but within a larger consortium. We also have quite diverse funding mechanisms, could be bilateral or national, meaning that the funding will come from your specific funding authority in your specific country, and then there are varied and diverse funding opportunities. Could be a grant, could be a conditional grant, could be a mixture of both. We will discuss those options for the relevant projects. All have benefits of their own. Then we have the application setting and procedure, meaning, are you going to go to a call as a single applicant? And then obviously one benefit is that the entire budget goes to you, but then you also have to be eligible to answer all of the calls criteria. Or are you going within a consortium? So then one downfall is that you only get a certain portion of the project, but a major benefit is that you have the ability to answer only for a specific portion of the core requirements. And another major benefit is that whilst working on a consortium, you get to meet diverse partners from Europe or globally and form long-lasting ties that we at Argentum will help you nurture and sustain. So we, as a whole at Argentum today, work on an ongoing basis with 120 plus funding sources, which are very diverse, applied to different settings, different countries, and can be a bit overwhelming to navigate. So when working with us, we will guide you through the funding sources, the application procedure, the funding mechanism, and combine them all towards the best possible proposal that we can prepare. Having discussed briefly this process, let's have a quick look into my department, the strategic department. So this is an overview of me and my colleagues at the strategic department. Now, at Argentum, we have aligned ourselves with the Horizon Europe thematic division of clusters, which I'm sure the majority of you are familiar with. We have 4 distinct clusters within our department, but we engage also with other clusters that are not our primary clusters. Odelia, here at the left, is our head of department and deals mainly with bottom-up funding opportunities, meaning open to all thematic fields. At the top, you can see my colleague Florence, who is the head of Cluster 6, that deals mainly with food, bioeconomy, and natural resources. Moving to the right, you have my colleague Caroline, who is the head of Cluster 1, that deals with health. Moving down on the right, we have my colleague Leah, who is our head of Cluster 4, which deals with digital, industry, and space. And moving to the left, we finish with me, Ben, and I'm the head strategist of Cluster 5, the cluster, as we mentioned, of climate, energy, and mobility. Now, for those of you who are maybe a bit less familiar with the Horizon Europe clusters, again, which we have aligned mostly towards this division, I'll just mention that the cluster division is arranged thematically, but it's not as rigid as it might appear. So for instance, if we look at cluster 6 and cluster 5, cluster 6, one of the components is environment, while cluster 5 has climate and energy, and we can obviously see the interconnectivity between the two. The same as with cluster 4 that has digital aspects, and cluster 5, because it is quite expected and reasonable to see that most applications within, let's say, energy or mobility will naturally have digital aspects involved in them. Altogether, this is meant to show that there is much interconnectivity and interchangeability between Horizon Europe clusters and the clusters here at Argentum. And we approach this as we approach all our tasks from our deep belief in teamwork. So once you work with us, let's say you are going to propose a project in climate or mobility, so I will be your strategist at Argentum, I will be your dedicated strategist, but at the same time, you will enjoy the expertise of all of my colleagues. So for instance, down the line, we'll discuss upcoming Horizon Europe calls when I, as your strategist, will devise a submission plan for you or a concept note for a specific project. I will already have discussed the project with my colleagues, could be with Leah on digital, could be with Florence on environmental aspects, could be with Caroline on health aspects. So now that we've discussed Argentum as a whole and the strategic department and our clusterization, I suggest that we move on to our main topic of today and look into upcoming funding opportunities for Cluster 5. So for today's webinar, what we've done is arrange a couple of very interesting options for you all of you in the various scenes of cluster 5 or cluster 5 adjacent. And we've divided these into 5 categories, which we will break down in the next slides. The first will be bottom-up calls. Then we'll discuss Eureka program and specific calls within Eureka. Then we'll discuss EIT, the European Innovation Institute of Technology, and we'll discuss specific calls within the urban mobility upcoming calls. Then we'll look into Horizon Europe program cluster 5 calls, and we'll conclude by looking into Horizon Europe missions, which are cross-cluster calls, which are interesting examples because they will show us, for instance, how a mission that is primarily designed for a different cluster, not cluster 6, can also offer great benefits and opportunities for cluster 5 clients. So as I mentioned, we're going to start by looking into bottom-up opportunities. And here we've got 2 opportunities, which I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with, so we'll just give a brief overview. We've got the 2 opposing ends of EIC, the European Innovation Council. On the left, we've got the EIC Accelerator and the EIC Pathfinder. I will just touch upon both. EIC Accelerator is the program that grants the highest grant for a single applicant in the EU. You can ask for up to 2.5 million euros of a grant at 70% funding rate. Additionally, you can ask for an equity investment of up to 15 million euros. EIC Accelerator has 2 options, either an open call or a challenge call. The open call, you can, again, suggest whichever project you want. Within the challenges, I've highlighted here at the bottom a specific challenge that I think is relevant for a lot of clients in cluster 5, and that will be energy storage. Within this challenge, there are a lot of options which we can discuss separately. Now, within EIC Accelerator, the purpose of this track is to reach the market. So this track is relevant for projects that have already reached TRL 5 or 6, and will reach within 24 months TRL 8, and are intended to reach the market. What happens if you are not suitable for such a track? What happens if you say to me as your strategist, well, Ben, this is all very nice, but I'm still years away from reaching the market, but I have a really, really innovative idea and solution for similar applications? Then we've got EIC Pathfinder. And Pathfinder, in many ways, is the mirror image of the Accelerator. If Accelerator is for market-oriented, Pathfinder is for breakthrough innovation. And here, here we've got also 2 options. We've got an open call and we've got the challenge call. The challenge call, we'll just jump a minute to the bottom of the slide. The upcoming challenge call for October is clean and efficient cooling, which could be very relevant once again for a lot of clients in cluster 5. Now, whereas EIC Accelerator is for single applicants, EIC Pathfinder allows you within the EIC challenge to submit a proposal as a single applicant, an option most readily recommended for research institutions because this is a research-focused track, or with a partnership with 1 additional partner, or with 3 partners upwards. So you have multiple options here within cluster 5 to pick very large projects with large budgets. Pathfinder has a budget of 3 up to 4 million euros and 100% funding rate depending on the track. And Accelerator, I mentioned the funding mechanism before. Now, just a word about the timelines. EIC Accelerator is a 2-stage call. We have an ongoing first stage application throughout the year and 3 to 4 deadlines, cutoff dates for step 2, which is the full proposal. Now, the full application for Accelerator for the challenges I've mentioned the dates below. We have upcoming dates in March, June, and October. For Pathfinder, there's one annual date for the open challenge, open call, and one deadline for the challenge. The upcoming deadline for the challenge for 2023 is late October, meaning there's a lot of time to prepare, to come up with the right partners, and to devise your projects for either Accelerator, Pathfinder, or in case you have great ideas for both, to go for both tracks. So let us move on from these bottom-up opportunities and discuss Eureka as a framework and specific upcoming Eureka calls for Cluster 5. Now, for those of you who are less familiar with Eureka, I'll just mention quite briefly that this is the world's largest public network. At current, it has about 45 countries. The majority of these are European Union countries, but also non-European Union countries, including countries associated to the Horizon Europe program, such as Israel, and also countries that are completely non-associated with that program, including, for instance, Canada in North America, Chile, and South Africa, South Korea. So you've got within Eureka a very large framework for international cooperation and R&D innovation. Now, Eureka offers regular calls that aim to bridge gaps between industry leaders and SMEs, with a very large focus within Eureka on SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. If you are from a university or a research institute, that does not mean you cannot apply. You are welcome to apply for certain Eureka tracks, but here we have to state that all funding for Eureka projects is via your specific funding authority from your specific country. And here, for each call, funding might be a bit tricky, and we are here to help you navigate the process of applying for Eureka calls, discussing all the funding mechanism with the relevant national contact persons, and devising the right partnerships. Let's turn and look at first the overall structure of Eureka, and then at 3 upcoming funding opportunities for Cluster 5 within the Eureka framework. So this slide shows the complete structure of Eureka. And on the left side, we can see Eureka is comprised of 2 main components. First, on the left side, we've got the flagship Eureka project or program, which is Eurostars. Eurostars is a completely bottom-up track. It allows cooperation between 2 or more partners from 2 or more Eureka countries. You are free to suggest whichever project you want, and Eurostars usually has 2 deadlines per year. On the right side, you can see the clusters that make up, that belong to Eureka. And here at the moment, we've got 5 clusters. Different countries belong to different clusters and support different clusters. The most relevant cluster for clients within the climate, mobility, and energy fields is the second one here, Eureka 2030, which deals primarily with low carbon energy. Now, that does not preclude you from engaging with other clusters. For instance, if you are in software development for, let's say, mobility or energy, then Tier 4 cluster is very relevant for you. Likewise, if you manufacture electronics components, then XX cluster is again relevant for you. Another option which is not listed here but is likewise relevant is the Eureka network projects, which allow specific collaboration between 2 or more Eureka countries. So those are projects that are very similar in nature to Eurostars, but occur differently. The next slide, which we'll turn to now, will highlight 3 upcoming Eureka opportunities. Now here, listed according to the programs, we can see three distinct opportunities which you can apply to within Eureka, and that which are very relevant for Cluster 5. I'll start at the top with the flagship program, Eurostars. So as I mentioned, Eurostars is geared mainly towards SMEs, and it involves all Eureka countries, but with the caveat that this depends on having said country allocated a budget for a specific deadline of Eurostars. Now, Eurostars, as I mentioned, is a recurring call. Usually it has a spring and an autumn deadline. The upcoming deadline is the 13th of April 2023, so just under 3 months, which is a very good time for you to get engaged right now with devising a project and a partnership for Eurostars. For Eurostars, again, you can pitch any project you want, any R&D project, with one additional partner from a different Eureka country. So if, for instance, you are from France, you can have a project with another partner from any Eureka country, Germany, South Korea, Israel, whatever. Then we have the next option, which is a sector-specific one, and this is the Eureka 2030, sorry, excuse the mistake, 2030 cluster, which again is the Eureka cluster for low carbon tech. Now, Eureka 2030 is a two-stage call, and with each deadline, you can submit for the relevant stage you are at. So the next deadline, the available one, is in about a month and a half, just under, the 24th of February. So if you've already submitted the first stage, you can submit the second. If you are new to Eureka, you can submit the first. Eligibility-wise, again, this focuses mainly on SMEs, but we have a more restricted list of countries that belong to Eureka, and they are all listed here. Again, there's quite a few to pick and choose from. Now, we'll close the discussion on Eureka by looking at the last option here, which is another sector-specific option, and this is a lightweighting call. The deadline for this call is the 21st of April. Please note that only a few countries are participating in this call. The scope is any R&D project relating to lightweighting technology. That could be devising materials to be lighter, smart design around lightweighting, circular economy. And for those of you less familiar with this call, with this topic, lightweighting originally applied to the mobility sector, but the purpose of this call is also to engage with other activities and other sectors. So you're more than welcome to pitch any project that fits this call. Now, in contrast to the other Eureka options, lightweighting is not a call that has appeared before in Eureka. So we would recommend to clients that could be interested in such a call to apply for this upcoming deadline, because we simply do not know if it will recur, and this is a very good opportunity to get engaged. Now that we've discussed Eureka and the bottom-up opportunities, let's turn our focus to Horizon Europe and to upcoming opportunities for Cluster 5 within this program. We'll start first with, we skipped EIT, so we'll engage first EIT quickly, and then we'll go over to Horizon Europe. So EIT has, as a framework, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology is an independent body of the European Union. It was established in 2008 in order to deliver innovation across Europe. And EIT as a whole seeks to power innovators and entrepreneurs across Europe in order to turn their best ideas into products, services, jobs, and growth. Now, EIT has a few branches. The one relevant for us today is EIT Urban Mobility. And here we've got also a couple of interesting opportunities for you. We'll start with EIT Mobility Innovation Open Call, which has a deadline in March. And here this call is for SMEs that will apply with an existing or a new client for a challenge around 5G tech, sustainable city logistics, future mobility, with a project aiming at high tier rail. The budget for this project is 60,000 euros per SME. Our group also the next call, Raptor Agile Innovation Competition, within the call we just spoke. Raptor has a deadline in May. It is also eligible for SMEs and also startups. And it is a competition which takes place annually in different cities which address different and unique themes, with a budget of 40,000 euros per SME. Now, these are modest budgets, that's true, but we at Argentum like to think of this as an opportunity rather than as a disadvantage. A smaller budget also allows for a shorter project. And we think that for such calls, it's a good idea to fit them strategically in between larger funding opportunities that we might engage. The last opportunity here is one of EIT's larger calls, the Mobility Innovation Open Call. The upcoming deadline will be in June. Here, any type of organization is allowed to join, and participation is cross-European. The budget for this program is 8.7 million euros. For a specific project, this has not been allocated yet. And the challenge areas will be mobility and energy, future mobility, and sustainable city logistics. So once again, EIT as a whole offers you another funding opportunity for European grants. Now we'll move on to Horizon Europe, and we'll start with a brief look into the EU's objectives within the Green Deal and the climate action, which greatly influence the annual work plans of the clusters, and for today's discussion, for Cluster 5. So the Green Deal and climate action aim to align action in all areas. Specifically relevant for us are energy, mobility and transport, regional policy and low carbon economy, and research and innovation on climate change. On the right side of the screen, you can see the destinations within Cluster 5 for the 2023 work plan that has been released a couple of weeks ago. I'm not going to go over all of the destinations, but I will say, because we are now going to look at specific opportunities, the destinations have a lot of crossover between climate, energy, and mobility. So they allow you both to pitch a project for a specific call. If you, let's say, are an energy related company, you will have projects specifically for energy. But if you would like a project that has broader implications within Cluster 5, those are quite common within the upcoming destinations. So now we'll look at a couple of examples from the destinations, all of which are for the spring deadlines of March and April 2023, so 2 to 3 months ahead. And this is now a very good time to get involved with these projects, either as participants or as coordinators. Let's look first at Destination 2, cross-sectoral solutions for climate transition. Here, I've highlighted 2 upcoming options that are very relevant for probably a lot of you. We have the first call, technologies for sustainable, cost-effective, and low-carbon footprint downstream processing and production of battery-grade materials. Horizon Europe could work on more catchy names for the title of the proposals, but they are also very informative. So for this first call, we have a very nice budget of 7 million euros per project, with 3 projects to be funded and 100% funding rate. This is a more research oriented project, so it also aims at lower tier rails. The deadline is the 18th of April. Now, this deadline is also shared with the next call here, which is open pilot line or test bed for hydrogen. Now, hydrogen is becoming a hot topic in the EU and in the Horizon Europe work plans. And this project, for instance, this call has a largest budget of 10 million euros, but only one project is intended for funding and will have a 70% funding rate. If we turn our attention to directions 3, sustainable, secure, and competitive energy supply, here we have a very nice call for energy and climate, and this is photovoltaic integration in buildings and in infrastructure. This call, again, has implications that could be very wide within cluster 5, so it could be suitable for a lot of you, I suppose. And here we have a budget of 8 million per project, 2 to be selected, and the deadline is March 2023. Now, for instance, in such a call, if you are in the PV industry, obviously you will have a lot to contribute. But what if you're not? What if you only are adjacent to it? What if you have other solutions to do with climate change and are relevant for buildings and infrastructure as a whole? So here we step in, and my role as your strategist will be to say, well, let's think creatively, not on why you can't fit the score, but rather how we at Argentum can get you to engage with this call and with other calls that maybe you will be only relevant for a part of the call, but within a larger consortium, that part could still be relevant for the overall solution and challenge. So we'll look at another couple of options, and then we'll move to the missions and conclude our discussion for today. Destination 4 of the current work plan is efficient, sustainable, and inclusive energy use. Here we have another interesting call, which also relates to the previous one we spoke about, and this is innovative, cost-effective solutions for zero-emission buildings. Again, a very nice budget of 5 million per project, 3 to be funded, and a deadline in April. The last direction we'll speak about for today is clean and competitive solutions for all transport modes. So if the previous destinations we mentioned focused more on energy and climate, this destination focused primarily on mobility. So here we've got 2 very nice calls. First is frugal zero-emission vehicles concepts for the urban passenger challenge, with a large budget of 7 to 12 million per project, 2 to be funded, and a deadline in April. And another call that again highlights the centrality of hydrogen currently in the EU is accelerating climate neutral hydrogen powered or electrified aviation, with a smaller budget of 3 to 5 per project, but 4 to be funded, and 100% funding rate, again, because this is a more research-oriented project. Now, we'll close this webinar with a quick look into Horizon Europe missions. Now, whereas the clusters are geared towards specific themes, missions are much larger and have a lot of interconnectivity between clusters. I've highlighted for today 3 missions with relatively close deadlines where cluster 5 clients could find a lot of interest. The first mission is the 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. And here we've got 2 calls. The first is co-design smart systems and services for user-centered shared zero-emission mobility of people and freight in urban areas. Now, please note the significantly large budget of this call. Now, it's 25 million euros per project with 2 to be funded and a deadline in April. Now, please bear in mind, 25 million euros per project would probably also require a large, very large consortium. So here, for instance, for this call, even if we go over the conditions for the call and you tell me, Ben, I'm only 10% relevant for this call, I'll say that's good, because you can still be a partner within what we expect will be a very large consortium. So again, we will try to think creatively about how to fit you into as many relevant opportunities to maximize your chances of success. We've got another call for positive clean energy digital twins, from modeling to creating climate neutral cities, which again highlights how the connectivity between the clusters works, because here we can see, for instance, how themes from cluster 5 are very much related from themes to cluster 4, the digital and climate and energy. And the last ones we'll discuss are the ocean mission to restore ocean and waters by 2030. We have a mission here for September, lighthouse in the Baltic and North Sea basins, green energy efficient small-scale fishing fleets. Now, again, this mission highlights the connectivity between the clusters because this is more geared towards cluster 6 as a whole, but we can see that with the focus on materials, on natural resources and environment, but we can see that the green energy efficient emphasis here brings to light the centrality of cluster 5. And we'll close by mentioning the adaptation to climate change mission and the call again for September, testing and demonstrating transformative solutions to protect critical infrastructure from climate change, mainstreaming nature-based solutions. Also with a very nice budget of 8 to 11 million per project, with 3 to be funded. For these last 2 missions, we have a longer deadline, again, all the way to September. So once again, this is a good time to get engaged in advance. Now, when I, as a strategist or one of my colleagues will work with you, we will devise early on during our process a roadmap so you will know months in advance which calls, which projects we are targeting. So let's say you start working with us and you say, well, I'm very interested in a Horizon Europe call for April in Eurostars and in the mission. How can we fit them all? That's when we start talking. That's when we get engaged with the submission process and we devise the process so you will have it as clear as possible and you will have a roadmap, let's say 6 months into the future, so you'll know when we will target which project and how we'll do it. So this brings us to the conclusion of this webinar. I hope that you found it informative and interesting, and that it has inspired you to look into your next funding opportunities. Later on, our marketing team will be sending a follow-up email, so you are welcome to book a call via the link that will be sent to you. And I look forward to hearing from all of you. And thank you very much for your time today. Thank you and good day.